Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today I'm going to get into some Kindle Unlimited horror book recommendations, which is perfect for the spooky season that we are in. I am so happy it's fall and people are going to be getting into more horror books because that is truly where I thrive. And y'all, for this video, I went through the first 50 pages of Kindle Unlimited's horror section. So I believe I sorted them by like most highly rated. So of the first 1,600 most highly rated horror books on Kindle Unlimited, these are the ones that I would recommend. I went through the 1,600 so you don't have to, and I'm going to present, I believe I have like 35 in this video for you to choose from. I did get some comments on the thriller version that I did of this video, which I will link up above and down below if you missed it, saying like, oh, not all of these are thrillers, like that's more horror, that's more romance. Listen, I'm just going based on the books that I would recommend from the category on Kindle Unlimited. So this is not my opinion of how I would sort these books, but these are the ones that were in the horror section, which, can we talk about the fact that there's a lot of smut in the horror section of Kindle Unlimited, and a lot of it looks like very low budget and very freaky and weird. Yeah, why is that listed as horror and not like erotica? I don't know. It's a little concerning. Like, dark romance is one thing, horror is another. I don't know. So that is something that I noticed. But all the books that I'm going to feature in this video, I gave at least 3.5 out of 5 stars. And I think anything below 3.5, that's what I would call like an average, kind of like meh book. All of these I did genuinely enjoy. Maybe I had like some personal like picky issues with them, but they're all good. And just for the sake of time, since we are going to be going through so many books today, I'm not going to give the full rundown of the synopsis or my full reviews. Chances are, if I'm recommending it here, I've already talked about it at length in a wrap-up video or featured it in a vlog. So if you're interested in hearing my full thoughts, I'm sure you can find the book that you're looking for in a thumbnail, or if you comment down below and I remember what video it's in, I can definitely link you over there. But yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into my Kindle Unlimited horror recommendations. Do not scroll through these 50 pages because trust me, some of it is traumatizing. Instead, just read these. Let's start out with Paradise Club by Tim Meyer. This one is so fun. Not too like Halloween fall vibes. It's very much like summer beach resort vibes. And it is just a straight up slasher of all these people that get invited to this mysterious billionaire's island for free. They take advantage of this opportunity, but little do they know where it's going to get them. This one was no thoughts, head empty, a fun little summer slasher, and I ate it up. Next up, we have The Risk, which is the first book in the Mindfuck series, and this is definitely more dark romance coded, but I would say that this qualifies as horror because we are following the perspective of a female serial killer, and she is setting off on this journey to kill everyone who was involved in her past trauma. We learn a lot about that, and then of course we're following the romance subplot of her hooking up with her little boy toy on the side, who coincidentally happens to be the FBI agent that's assigned to her case. Kind of wild, kind of trashy, but I'm obsessed with it. The whole series is amazing. I give most of these books in the series 5 stars. Next up, we have Dear Laura by Gemma Amore, and this is about a girl who witnessed her boyfriend be kidnapped in front of her all of these years ago, and now she's getting like weird stuff in the mail about his disappearance. It has vexed her all of these years, and she goes on this horrifying journey to try to find out what happened to him. It's very emotional, it's very intense, and it is very well written, well done. Next up, we have True Crime by Samantha Kolesnik, and this one is very intense. Okay, this is borderline extreme horror, but I do still recommend it. It doesn't have any of the like weird self-insert shit that a lot of extreme horror authors unfortunately tend to do. This book is actually really well done. It is well written, and the horror is more about the psychological state of our main character, who is a very young girl who ends up going on a killing spree with her brother due to their past trauma, and she gets sucked up into this whole identity of being a little girl serial killer, and it's less about the actual like plot of what's happening. The horror lies in the psychological in this one, although it is gory and intense as well. Next up, we have another one that is more romance coded. This is more dark romance, but it definitely is horrifying, and that is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. This is a kidnapping dark romance where two people, a girl and her brother-in-law, are taken and held in this place by this evil serial killer man, forced to do horrible things to themselves and each other. And after they get out of this situation, so the horror kind of happens in the beginning, but after they're out, you follow the aftermath, which honestly kind of reads like a soap opera, but I was obsessed with it. I could not stop reading it. I ate it up. It's just like entertaining. And if you are a horror reader, but maybe you're wanting to get into more like dark romance, I think Still Beating is a great place to start. Next up, we have Dirty Heads by Erin Gerais. If you like queer horror, this one is for you. It's basically about a young boy coming to terms with his queerness through this lens of body horror and psychological horror. It is weird, it is trippy, but I absolutely loved it. I recommend this to everyone who says they like queer horror, and no one has said that they have not liked it. Next up, we have Only the Stains Remain by Ross Jeffrey. Sorry. I have the list of books down here. I'm just like double checking I'm getting the author name right, because I thought it was Jeffrey Ross, but it's Ross Jeffrey. God, names that are two first names confuse the hell out of me for no reason. Only the Stains Remain is very similar to a couple others that I've already recommended in this video. It is a revenge plot line. Our main character has set out to kill every single person who had a hand in his trauma that he went through growing up. And again, it's that great balance of gore, because the killing is intense, but also psychological horror as he kind of reworks his past trauma. Next up, we have Tribesmen by Adam Cesare, and this is set in the 80s, and it's about this really gross, low-budget, exploitative horror movie that's being made on native land, and the spirits of the natives come up and try to take revenge on these white people that are exploiting the land. It is so good. It reminds me of The Ruins by Scott Smith, which is one of my favorite horror books. If you like that, you'll love this one. Next up, we actually have a horror story collection, and this is Daymares by Kenya Moss Dime. It's a collection of different horror stories, very, very fall coded. This one is one that I recommended a lot last year in my fall, October, Halloween type of book recommendation videos, and it's so accessible, available right on KU. I loved almost every single story in here. They have a lot about like creepy kids, atmospheric stuff for fall. They're digestible, kind of like darkly comedic at times, easy to read, and gets the job done. Next up, we have Disseverment by Z.C. Kroll. This is one of my favorite books of last year. It was a little horror story that I took a chance on. I'd never heard of it, and it took me by surprise so much. I loved every second of it. It's about this guy, and he has a weird relationship with his parents, but he's about to get married to his fiance, and he wants to mend these relationships before he goes into his marriage. Again, it's a lot of psychological horror in that way, but it's kind of mirrored by this metaphor that is deeply disturbing. It's body horror, it is gross, it is gory, and it is amazing. It marries that combo of psychological and body horror that I love so much perfectly. Next up, I want to recommend Whatever Remains of Us in the End by Brandon Baker. And you probably know Brandon if you are on Book Talk. His ad is Baker Reads, and this is his novella, which I loved so much. It's about some kids who break into the house on the end of the street that everyone's a little bit afraid of, where allegedly a witch lives, and it pops off from there. It goes in a lot of different directions. Honestly, it's kind of chaotic, but I was living for it. It's super atmospheric. atmospheric, perfect for this time of year, and of course it's available on KU. Next up, this is one that I read for Happy Hailey-ween, my week-long readathon that I host every October, and that is Petrified Women by Jeremy Ray. This is about a girl who finds out that the man that she's dating is a serial killer. As she is hiding in his house, trying to like surprise him on his birthday, she's like, oh my god, I'm gonna sneak in with like balloons, and when he opens the closet, I'll be like, happy birthday, babe! But he comes back to his house with a victim. It's crazy. It is fast-paced, it is exciting. It's a little all over the place, a little confused. I feel like it has a lot of subplots that weren't quite resolved fully, but regardless, it was a really fun, thrilling ride. I read it at like midnight or something on the very last sprint of Hailey-ween last year, and I loved it. Next up, I want to recommend the entire creature feature collection. There are all of these little creature features that were written, I believe, last fall by a ton of well-known horror and thriller authors, and they are just little tiny bites, like between, I would say, like a 30-minute read and maybe a few hours, and they're all about different creatures. Some of my favorite ones are The Ankle Snatcher by Grady Hendrix, Big Bad by Chandler Baker, and It Waits in the Woods by Josh Mallerman. Next up, we have the Slaughter trilogy. This is the second one, Halloween Slaughter, but obviously I recommend the entire trilogy, and you have to read them in order, starting from the beginning, so you can really get the most out of the story and the character development. In this book, we are following our villain, Varias Caras, who is this massive cannibalistic killer man who is actually terrifying, but we learn a lot about his backstory. We learn about his trauma. At some points, we low-key find ourselves rooting for this villain. It creates a very similar feeling as to watching something like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, where this villain is like fucked up, but you're like kind of rooting for him. It's a slasher. It's reminiscent of like 80s horror movies that are my jam. I absolutely love this trilogy. Next up, we have The Chill by Scott Carson, and I actually haven't read this book yet, but I really want to. It's on my fall TBR for this year, so I will definitely be reading it on KU this year. It definitely gives like atmospheric vibes, and I believe it takes place at a summer camp, which you know how I've been in 2024 with my summer camp slashers and horror books. I've been eating it up. So if you want to read something along with me this fall, you can pick this one up. Next up, I was surprised to see that there's actually some Fear Street and R.L. Stine books on Kindle Unlimited. I had no idea. This one is just an example of a picture of one that I pulled as I was going through the list. They have quite a few, but this one is the third horror. Obviously, R.L. Stine books are like middle grade, but they're so nostalgic. Obviously, they're hard to find. Like, you're not just gonna walk into a Barnes & Noble and be able to get these, especially like with the vintagey looking cover. So I thought it was really cool that if you want those little nostalgic vibes this fall, you can access it really easily on KU. Next up, there are a couple Natasha Preston books on Kindle Unlimited, which I know I have like very mixed opinions of her books, so you might not want to go out and buy them. If you still want to give them a try and form your own opinion, I would definitely try them out on KU. This was the highest rated one that I came across. It's called You Will Be Mine. It is the follow-up to The Cellar. I believe it's The Cellar. All of her titles kind of run together. The Cellar, The Cabin, The Basement, the blah blah, the blah. This was the follow-up to The Cellar, and The Cellar and this book were probably my favorites of any that she's ever written. They were like her OGs, I believe. They started on Wattpad, and I'm kind of obsessed. I love that they're on KU. Next up, we have another one that is, I was gonna say romance, but it's honestly more like slasher featuring smut. It's called Scream for Us by Molly Doyle. This is another one that I read last year during Happy Hailey-ween. I actually read it with a ton of my friends on sprints. We all read it together. It was so much fun. And if you are on Masked Man TikTok, which I definitely am, and you're bombarded with thirst traps of men wearing like scream masks, you're gonna like this book. It's about a girl who goes to a Halloween party and she's hooking up with 3 masked men, and then they all go on a killing spree together. It's a trip, it's weird, but I absolutely ate it up. Here's another one that I actually haven't read yet, but I do plan on reading this year. If you want to read it too, it's available on KU. This is Poor Things by Alistair Gray. And obviously it just got a movie adaptation that people are actually kind of mixed on, but I am very interested to read the book first before I see the movie and form my own opinion about it. It's about a woman who's kind of like Frankenstein made out of nothing, and how she kind of adapts to being a woman in the world, and I believe it pops off and has a lot of feminist commentary in it, so I'm super interested. Next up, we have some snowy horror. This is Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell, which I absolutely loved. I gave this one 5 stars a couple years ago. It is haunting. It is about this couple who go on this snowy cabin retreat together, and they are haunted by this mysterious voice that is whispering outside of their window. And even after they go home from this getaway, the wife cannot stop speaking in tongues in her sleep to this mysterious presence, and it is so creepy, so suspenseful. I know this book is really divisive. You either love it or hate it. I love it, so don't argue with me about it because I love it. Next up, we have Baby Teeth by Zoya Stage, and this is about a creepy little child who makes her mom's life a living hell. If you like creepy kid horror, you're gonna love this. This also has the feel and the pacing more of a thriller, although there aren't a ton of like twists. It's not very thrilling. It is definitely more horrifying, so I think they grouped it in the right category here. But yeah, I hear a lot of like negative things about this book, and I don't know why, because I think it's better than The Push by Ashley Audrain. I love them both, but like I do think it was more exciting than that book. And I also think this had a better ending than The Perfect Child by Lucinda Berry. They're all really, really similar, and I love them all, but Baby Teeth, I feel like it gets a bad rap when it's kind of good. Next up, we have Tastes Like Candy by Ivy Tholen, which I just read the sequel to this one on KU earlier this year, but this is the first one, which I definitely liked better than the second one. It's about a group of girls, their senior year of high school, who are tasked with this senior scavenger hunt at a abandoned amusement park, and they start getting slashed, picked off one by one. It is amusement park horror. It is so much fun, and I highly recommend it. Next up, we have Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle, which is actually going to be my next read. I am doing a Chuck Tingle taste test, so I cannot wait to read this one. He writes some queer horror. This one takes place at a conversion camp, and I've heard amazing things about it. Next up, more serial killer romance vibes. We have There Are No Saints by Sophie Lark, as well as the follow-up, which is There Is No Devil. I absolutely love the covers with the snakes. I love that they changed the ones on KU to be this cover because when I read them, the covers were horrible. But that didn't stop me from loving these books. These were some of my favorites of, I believe, 2021. I don't really remember, to be honest, but I absolutely love this duo of books. It's about 2 serial killers who team up and fall in love. It's like 50 Shades of Grey if they were killers. It's horrifying, it's graphic, both violence-wise and sex-wise, but it is amazing to me. Next up, we have some Anya Alborn. A lot of her backlist is actually available on KU, and I love quite a few things from her, but this is definitely the most like horror, like straightforward horror. It is called The Shuddering, and it is about a group of really annoying, insufferable people that go on this snowy vacation and get eaten by creatures in the snow one by one by one. It is very satisfying to see these dumbass people getting taken out. I'm not gonna even lie. That's the thing that I enjoyed the most about this one. So if you're looking for a snowy slasher, this one is no thoughts, head empty, easy read for you. There's also quite a few Jack Ketchum books available on KU, including The Girl Next Door, which is very intense, very, very, very sad psychological horror, but it's also my favorite of all the Jack Ketchum that I've read because it feels so viscerally real, and it's even more horrifying that it's from the perspective of this little boy. It's all about this little girl who is being tortured by her caretaker, and this group of boys stands by and sees that it's happening, and unfortunately they do nothing to intervene. So it's really, really sad, really dark, really scary, and it's actually based on a real true crime case, which I feel kind of iffy about the ethics of that, but I do think this is a really impactful horror story because you see like the concept of the frog like slowly boiling alive in the pot just happening. Like everything that's so horrifying gets so normalized so fast. It's freaky, but it is so well done. Next up, we have The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. This, I unfortunately guessed the twist, guessed the reveal on like chapter 3, so I didn't get as much enjoyment out of it as a lot of other people that were totally blindsided by it. I know this was on a lot of people's favorites list the year that it came out, but I'm trying to put like my own personal feelings aside because I think a lot of people really, really like this and you might enjoy it. I love that it's available on KU. It is a hard book to try to describe without giving it away. We're basically following 3 perspectives. This guy, his little teenage daughter, and his cat. And we're trying to figure out what is going on in their house because they're all living together and this house is not what you think. Also available on KU is Delicate Condition by Danielle Valentine, and this is actually the book that the newest season of American Horror Story is based on. It is on my fall TBR. I will be reading it this year. It's the feminist update on Rosemary's Baby, and I cannot wait for it. It's a 5-star prediction, so hopefully it turns out to be a 5-star. I love that it's available on KU. If y'all want to read along with me, you're welcome to. Next up, we have The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, which I was kind of surprised to see this one in the horror section because it definitely felt more like a thriller to me, especially with the like crazy twist at the end. But this is just straight up one of my favorite books. It kept me up until 3 in the morning, ravenously reading until I was there at the ending twist, and it totally shocked me. I am obsessed. I know a lot of people are like, oh my god, really? Like, I guessed that so fast. Well, guess what, girl? Like, I didn't, and I loved it. And you know what? Maybe there are some people out there like me who would get a lot of enjoyment out of that as well. Sometimes people guess the twist in Silent Patient. Sometimes people guess the twist in Last House on Needless Street. You know what I mean? Like, we're all different. The Silent Patient is about this woman who stabbed her husband like 40 times or something crazy like that, and then she went mute. And this one psychologist, he truly believes he can break her, he can crack her, he can figure out why she did it, so he sets out to do that. Next up, we have A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. This is another book that, unfortunately, a couple chapters in, I did guess who the killer was, like, pretty immediately. But even though I did that, I still ended up giving this book 4 stars because I just enjoyed it so much. I think it's a really well-written thriller about missing girls who are turning up dead in Louisiana, in the swamplands. It's very atmospheric. It's written very well, it goes fast, it has great pacing, great character development. The only flaw was that I guessed the killer so early on, but I had so much fun with it and it was so atmospheric and good that I honestly didn't even really care. We also have The Butterfly Garden by Dot Hutchinson. I believe this entire series is available on KU, but I've only read the first one. And this is about a girl who is kidnapped and held in this place called the Butterfly Garden because a lot of the previous victims who have been held here are now encased in resin on the walls with butterfly wings tattooed all over their backs. So yeah, it's horrifying. And she is trying to avoid ending up like that. We know at the very beginning of the book that she escapes because at the very top she is saying to the police, like, what we're reading is basically the transcript of her telling what happened to her, and it's all leading up to this big escape that you know is going to happen. But I swear most of the time in the book I was like, this girl's gonna die, there's no way she makes it out, even though I knew, which I think is such effective horror. I think if you go into this thinking it's going to be a thriller with some big twist, you're going to be disappointed. But if you see it as the journey of the book is experiencing the horror alongside her, it's great. Getting into our last couple recs here, we have Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. This is about another creepy child. Okay, we're following a nanny who is looking after this little guy who's drawing creepy pictures, and there's something in the woods, and we have to figure out what the hell is going on here. The twist fucking took me out, bro. It is so wild and it is so unserious. Okay, a lot of people try to make this twist into something that it's not. I really just think it's like wild and unpredictable and weird. So I really enjoyed this book. This is another one that's like so atmospheric with the woods and the like creepy kid drawings. It feels like a movie like Insidious or something like that, or Sinister. But I absolutely loved it, even though some people have an issue with it. I just didn't take it that way. And lastly, we actually have ooh, I'm gonna announce something real quick. This is going to be the group book for Happy Halloween 2024, which is, like I mentioned earlier, the week-long readathon that I will be hosting in October. I really hope you'll participate with me. I'll be posting a full announcement video with prompts and recommendations very, very soon at the beginning of October. But this is going to be our group book, so you can go ahead and put it on your October TBR if you want to participate. It is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, and I am so excited to read it with you guys. I really wanted to pick something that's accessible and available on KU for you guys so everyone can try to participate. If you don't have KU, you can put out a hold for it at your library. Make sure you get it so you can read along. I'm so excited to get into this with you guys. Happy Halloween 2024 is gonna be amazing. Like, let's just be real. It's gonna be amazing. Best one yet. Let's go. So those are all of the books that I would recommend out of the first 50 pages of horror books available on Kindle Unlimited. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video and you got some good recs out of it. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And of course, don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. I will see you guys in my next one.